Good evening, everybody, and welcome back then to another LFM stream here for round 11 of the Pro Series. Last time out, we were at Indianapolis, where George Boothby became the winningest driver of the season, taking his third victory and seeing himself get up to third in the championship standings, but still a little bit away from our two main championship protagonists. Marco Bischoff currently leads the way from Jardier and goes into the last couple of rounds with quite a healthy lead. But as we have seen so far this season, anything can happen, and we're best to see some of where this final showdown will go in the championship than the Temple of Speed itself, Monza, this evening. A track with so much history and heritage will end up playing host then for this evening's 60 minutes of action. And it's going to be an interesting one because the way that this BOP has affected the cars, we've been talking about it a little bit in the last few races. And Monza's going to be a particularly interesting one. Recently, we would have expected the Audi to probably be one of the most dominating cars around here. It was just bonkers fast in a straight line. And Monza, of course, is and has always been a bit of a power dominator circuit. But the Audi no longer has that going for it. The Porsche has shown some good speed around Monza in the past, but it's just been so difficult to do anything with it because it hasn't had the straight line performance it's needed. Now that has changed with the tweaks with the aero and how all of that stuff is modelled in the game engine. Maybe the Porsche will have a bit more pace, and that's certainly what Marco Bischoff will be hoping to do from tonight's race. And then you've got the likes of the BMWs, the Ferraris, who were absolutely rapid at Indianapolis. So were the McLarens as well. And recently, those two cars, the Ferraris and McLarens, they've been showing some good straight line speed performance as well. So it'd be interesting to see how all of those cars get on. The Jardier in the M4, we'll have to see. I'm not sure how happy the M4 is going to be around here. I think it used to be quite a strong package, but it's definitely taken a bit of a beating in the latest BOP changes. Or recently, actually, Niels Niox, part of BS Plus competition, actually going for the M6 in recent sort of selections for various championships because the M4 has suffered so badly that whilst it may still be the faster car around some circuits, the old generation BMW actually, with the amount of power that car has always had, does end up actually managing to give it a very good run for its money and bring one of the older variations of cars that we have here in ACC back to a little bit of competitiveness. So it'd be really interesting to see how all of these drivers deal with that this evening. And speaking of the track that they'll be trying to negotiate, let's have a little bit of a look at our 11 turns of madness. The long start-finish straight, of course, in the opening sequence of the lap. Lots of overtaking opportunities going down into the first chicane, into turns 1 and 2, and then on the power as early as you dare through Curva Grande of turn 3, and then wrap that around to the second chicane, where again, more overtaking opportunities there. Maybe a little bit more cramped and difficult to go side by side through there, but the most daring drivers, of course we have some of the best on ACC here tonight, may try it. Then into the first and second Lesmo, you want good confidence in the cornering there, down the back straight towards the Ascari chicane. Such a fast and flowing series of corners there before you make your way onto the back straight from 10 to 11, and of course into Parabolica. So tricky to sometimes get the car nailed through there. Porsche does tend to like that corner to some extent, does really get the nose tucked in on the entrance to the apex, but can be a little bit of a hazard sometimes if it is not set up in such a way that the driver is comfortable to deal with that entry oversteer that we know is a big characteristic of that car. Another thing to factor into this evening's bit of racing is weather potentially. We've got a 30% chance of some changeable conditions, a 10% chance of rain, and we're starting out with quite a large amount of overcast. Now, We have been duped before previously with some weather conditions, and we've had completely dry races, but you think back to Watkins Glen where we had that qualifying session, Marco Jonkers capitalising on that very weird event that we had where the rain came in quite early on. Drivers only got a couple of attempts, really a bit of a one-lap wonder case, and Jonkers was the one that nailed that lap. Whether we have anything that these drivers have to tackle in that sense tonight, we will have to wait and see, but Monza in the wet, or when we've got changeable conditions, that can give a really interesting case for how you set up your car. Do you still go for outright straight line speed performance, or do you start to sacrifice a little bit of that, go for the extra bits of downforce so that you've got that confidence in the wet weather? But then are you going to be a sitting duck on the straights? And it's very tricky to make overtaking opportunities work at other parts of this circuit. Realistically, down into turns 1 and 2 and into 4 and 5, those two heavy braking zones after those long flat out sections, they're your best opportunities. You do sometimes see people managing to set up an exit out of the second Lesmo and down in towards the Ascari chicane if they can get down the inside there, and sometimes if they get a really good run out of Ascari in towards Parabolica, that can produce a good overtaking opportunity as well. But based on the length of that run, you quite often see the car that's leading their way down, defending the line, and then ends up being a drag race all the way down to turn 1 again. So despite the nature of this circuit and the slipstream being very powerful and having these long straights, doesn't always actually open up as many overtaking opportunities as perhaps some of the drivers would like, but it always does provide us with some very, very close action. And the way that some of these guys in the Pro Series have been driving as of late, I have no doubts whatsoever that we will see some fantastic racing as always for the penultimate round. In the final round, we'll be heading over to COTA for 90 minutes there. And we'll have to see what state the championship is in at that point. Marco Bischoff does go into today with quite a hefty lead in the standings. Currently sits at about 900 points over Jardier, so it's going to be tricky for Jardier to extract enough points from today's race to give a reasonable gap going into COTA, so that maybe if Marco has a bit of a shocker either today or at COTA, maybe then Jardier can do something about it into the final round. And then there's definitely a strong battle going on at the moment for P3 in the standings. George Boothby, the man that's really been on a charge as of late, moved his way up in front of Eric Del Fanta from last week's efforts by only 1 point. And when we're talking in the thousands here, that is such a tight margin, but just goes to really be synonymous with what we've seen in terms of the lap times, the qualifying performance. All the margins that we've had in this championship all the way through so far have been exactly that fine, going to the smallest margins and really having to eke out every little bit of time that you can to try to get an advantage over your competitors. And with a circuit like Monza, expect to see that sort of thing again with some of these cars, especially looking at like-for-like cars, because there's not as many opportunities sometimes to gain time on these sorts of circuits when you've got equal performance between those manufacturers. So, as ever with the Pro Series, tight stuff, and giving us all the joyous action that we've been having the entire season. We should be able to move into qualifying in just a moment. I shall check on how the server is doing. And the server is indeed up. So we should be able to make our way into that very, very shortly. And get underway for qualifying. Got about 90 seconds on the practice session left before we head into that then. But who is it going to be? We've got some fantastic names joining the grid this evening. Some familiar with the past few weeks, of course, but also a few fresh faces as well at the same time. Just trying to see who we have on the entry list for tonight. Of course, we've got the likes of Bischoff, Jardier, Carreras returning as well. Good performance from him last time at Indianapolis, competing for 4th place. Did manage to make his way up to 3rd briefly, but then a little bit of a scrap between himself and Valentine, who went on to take a P2 in that race. Ended up seeing Korekes dropped down behind Osterman, who took his first podium of the season. Boothby as well, Delfanta, Samir Fok, Mishka, Soldatov makes a return for this race. We've got Luke Addison as well, Sasha Vassner, Hugo Merles, Walsingham. Good performances from him recently in the McLaren, so it'll be interesting to see what he can do as well in that car, because the McLaren could be showing some pretty strong performance. And we also do have one Lexus in the field as well. I do believe it anyway, at least on the entry list. And we have now made our way into qualifying, so I shall get us hopefully all set up in just a moment. Drivers then heading out for the first time, and we'll get underway with 15 minutes of qualifying. Also, just as a little fun note from last week, if you do remember, I had a little bit of a hard time with some of the overlays and HUDs on the screen. You will notice that the weather has returned to the top right. What didn't occur to me during that previous stream was that it would actually be under the tyre information graphic, which was not quite perhaps what I was anticipating there, but we do at least have all of that lovely information up there now for the time being. Let's see, have we got our Lexus in the field? I'm trying to see who we may have. Because it was... who was it that signed up with that beautiful Lexus? We did have one at Indianapolis last time. It was Andre Bayer. Do we have Andre Bayer in this field? Trying to spot him. We do, and there it is. So we do have a Lexus competing here at Monza today. It's nice to see some of the older cars still making their way into the top splits of this racing. Maybe not the most outright competitive, but certainly gives us a nice bit of noise to listen to when that car flies around this circuit. But speaking of which, first time around then, it will be Bruyere to set a lap in the number 17 car, and let's go on board with him down in towards turn 1 and 2 then. Porsche will be dealing very nicely with that. Good brakes, obviously, and then hard on the power, accelerating out there and then through Curva Grande. This may be where the Porsche starts to get a little bit susceptible, going down through turn 3 before getting to the next chicane. Be an interesting comparison to see what sort of speed he achieves. So hitting about 255 kilometers an hour before slamming on the brakes in towards 4, switch it across to 5, take a little bit of curve, correcting on the exit, nice on the power. Got to be tricky, that curve doesn't send you across the circuit too severely, and then in towards 6 and 7. This is where the Porsche will be performing very nicely, using all of that runoff on the exit, and then you can really get away with it here on the exit of the second Lesmo. You can even touch wheel on the grass, and that's exactly what Bruyere is doing. The event heads down the back straight to complete the second sector, and then in towards the Ascara chicane. Lots of commitment needed here, a lot of confidence needed in the car to try to make this one work. Hard on the brakes, take as much curve as you dare on the entry. Want to take a little bit curve through turn 9 so it pulls the car across, but don't be too greedy, otherwise you will see yourself going into the gravel, and then getting yourself a nice square exit out of turn 10 all the way down to Parabolica, carrying that speed. Number 17 doing that very nicely, and then on the entry to the final corner. Oh, I'm not sure he wanted to go down second gear. Then you could hear the revs really soar. He was trying to get it stopped. Would have lost a bit of momentum, but heading towards the line then to finish the lap. It'll be a first effort then for Bruyere. We've got the likes of Boothby behind, who doesn't briefly goes to the top of the timesheets, but it's actually Anton Tokbalutov in the 21 car, and then Jardier puts himself up into provisional P1, man second in the standings, but then immediately taken away by another BMW of Daniil Tillich in the 28 car. We'll have to see on these first efforts as everyone starts to make their way through, but a few BMWs storming to the top of the timesheets for the time being. In the meantime, Luke Addison goes in towards P5. Samir Fok currently sitting in P7. Where is the likes of Karekas on circuit. So Karekas in the McLaren. Might see quite a handy time from him potentially. And it's good enough for P6. And Marco Bischoff, I was trying to find him in the grid order, but he has gone to the top of the timesheets only by 500ths of a second, mind. And that is very, very close between himself and some of those surrounding BMWs. But we know what Marco Bischoff can do in these sessions. He is an absolute weapon. He's getting a lovely tow off the Audi just in front as well. Can't quite see who that is, but that will have surely benefited him in trying to find some time in Sector 1, and he's pretty even with his delta. But somebody who is finding a lot of time, George Boothby and Karekas, who has just gone purple in that opening part of the lap, I believe, set the fastest final sector last time around. Both himself and George Boothby. His Karekas goes a little bit wider than I think he was looking to there. But both these guys really pushing very, very hard. George Boothby maybe about to jump to the top of the timesheets, and he does on a 47.8, so he takes provisional pole by just under a tenth of a second. But what can the likes of Karekas do? We've also got Del Fantas on a big improvement now as well. He could see himself get in towards the 47s. Whereabouts is he? He's a little bit further behind, so we'll stay with Karekas for the time being. I think that's Jardier just... no, it's one of the other BMWs just in front of the McLaren there, but he will be getting a little bit of a slipstream all the way down to Parabolica. And Tillich in that 28 car also starting to go pretty quickly as well. We've got some side-by-side action on the exit of final corner. I'm not sure that'll be quite helpful, but I think Karekas actually... Has he bailed out the lap? No, he hasn't. He's just taking a very tight line towards the line. But Karekas, I'm not sure it's going to be good enough provisional pole, but it is good enough for P3 for the time being. Del Fanta, I think he's made a mistake somewhere around the lap, but he was going very, very quickly earlier on. George Boothby, though, has all found another 0.2 of a second. Last week's winner looking very, very quick again in that Ferrari, trying to make it for this season. That would be extremely good form if he can do that. But Tillich, though, again, very, very fast through the first and second Lesmos. So keep an eye on that BMW. Hugo Merles makes it a Ferrari 1-2 up to the front of the grid then. Purple in the final sector for the number 11 car. But I think George Boothby is about to absolutely smash a lot of targets. Although Tillich is going very, very quickly, but even so, I don't think it'd be good enough to compete with this lap time from this pink Ferrari. 0.3 of a second up for Boothby, trying to make it another pole position in the number 4 car, and it is a 47.502. Absolutely monstrous time there for George Boothby, as Tillich has abandoned that lap time, so no further improvements for him. Del Fanta on a good improvement at the moment, has found about 0.3 in the middle portion of the lap. Dropping down to quarter seconds and maybe sacrificing a little bit on the exit of the second Lesmo, but still maintaining a good pace advantage. Now to see him get towards the tail end of the top 10, if he can maintain that gap. So Ferrari slightly further up, getting a nice tow as well. But it does look like, as Jardier is also... oh no, sorry, they haven't rearranged themselves. No, they have. Jardier, last time around, 0.003 of a second faster than Hugo Merle. So he splits the Ferraris, and that BMW looking more competitive than perhaps I would have given it credit for, so he will be very happy with that, and Marco Bischoff will be maybe slightly fearful of how this one could go. Del Fanta does improve, but only to P11 for the time being. Walsingham in the McLaren has gained about 0.2. Good exit out of the second chicane there. You can see racking up the time, almost 0.3 of a second up as he heads into the first Lesmo, so a lot of time in this McLaren. Walsingham has been driving very nicely in these last couple of races and gaining confidence in that car. He's almost got half a second. Going to get a good slipstream off that Ferrari just in front as well. The number 12 car putting in some good pace. Lozanov in P12 at the moment has found 0.3 on his lap as well, but it's looking very, very nice from the McLaren. How's he fare through the Ascari chicane? Oh, that car tricky with the curbs. Got to be so careful. I'll tell you what though, Loznov, half a second up. Where is he on the circuit? He is just ever so slightly behind, but keep an eye on that car because that is also flying 6 tenths a second up on his previous best, and that could really see him compete with the likes of George Boothby at the front of his field. So maybe, oh, that's a big off for Walsingham. That's going to be that lap abandoned. So let's keep an eye on where Loznov is. It's 6 tenths a second up from where he is. It's going to be very close up at the front end of the field. What can the McLaren do? It's a good enough for the front row, but misses out on provisional pole by 0.07 of a second. But that is a very good time there from the number 20 car. McLaren, a good collection of cars actually up at the front of the field. You can see yellow sector in sector 1 there, so more time in the tank for that car. Although same can be said clearly with Marco Bischoff. He hasn't even made his way to the second chicane yet, and he's already found a 10.5. So Marco Bischoff definitely not saying goodbye just yet to another pole position. Luke Addison is also on a good lap, 0.4 of a second up for him. It's going to be into the low 48s, and it's good enough to get him up to P14. And several cars come out of the pit lane there. Also got the likes of Samit on improvement. That's in the very early stage of the laps. Have to see if he can maintain that advantage. Tillich has found a couple of tenths in the opening part of the lap as well. Bischoff hasn't quite maintained the advantage that perhaps he would have wanted to in the Porsche. Look at some of those deltas. 2 tenths up for Tillich, a 10th up for Korekis. Not quite in the realms of Boothby and Lozanov, but certainly will be jousting around that top 5. That's a very wide moment for Bischoff. Can be feisty this circuit when it comes to track limits. I'm not sure if that will have invalidated his lap. Certainly very fine on the margins though, if it is still valid from his point of view, but I don't think it's going to be much of an improvement, if any. Tillich though, whereabouts is he? He is coming into the Ascari chicane now, and he has got almost 0.4 of a second up on his lap. This is an absolute flyer from Daniel Tillich in the 28 car. He's carried that delta all the way down to Parabolica, and that could very well see him compete with the likes of Loznov and Boothby. Can the number 28 BMW put a German cat amongst the pigeons up with the Italian and British manufacturer? It's looking pretty good. Half a second up. This could be a mighty time from Tillich, and it's good enough for provisional pole. The first man into the 0.4s. Huge time there from the number 28 car, but George Boothby already going fastest in the early parts of sector 1, so keep an eye on that Ferrari. 3 minutes left on the clock of this session, but what a time there from Tillich. Brilliant stuff there. Marco Bischoff continuing to find time. Hasn't quite been able to put together the lap he would have wanted though. Purple in sector 1 on his previous lap time, so good pace in that Porsche, even in that opening sector that typically is dominated by straight line speed, but just hasn't quite been able to unite it throughout the lap. Boothby continuing to go quickly, as is Jardier. 1/4 of a second up, and he hasn't even made his way down to the second chicane, so lots of time being found by each of these drivers. Monza really a circuit that if you are willing to flirt with the edges of those runoffs and gravel trap and really push it with the curbs, you can extract a huge amount of time, but it will absolutely bite you. Although that was a less than perfect corner for Jardier there into the first Lesmo. Lost quite a chunk of time. Marco Bischoff, though, has maintained that advantage. Good exit out of Parabolica as well. It's going to be almost 0.3 of a second improvement heading towards the line. I don't think it'll be good enough for challenge for pole, but it might be good enough for P4. And as he hits the line, it is. With just under 2 minutes on the clock left, he might have just crossed the line in time to get 2 more runs. I'm not sure how much fuel he would have had there, but purple first sector again for Marco Bischoff, as Tillich was bringing up purple on his time. I think he was very much on and off with that, but it's not going to be an improvement for the time being. George Boothby starting his lap. If he carries that momentum through the first chicane, and he has, he's got over a tenth and a half, in fact, on the exit first chicane. So George Boothby still looking to put in a last-minute flyer to try to snatch away provisional pole. We've also got Mishka further down the order in P16 in the BMW. He's found a tenth and a half in the opening couple of sectors in that lap on the way down towards the Ascari chicane. Also the likes of Del Fanto, who's a bit further up the road, and sending himself to the moon, and that Audi taking a huge lump of curb on the exit of turn 10. That may have unsettled the car and given himself a bit of trouble. But my goodness, those deltas at the front of the field are looking very, very quick indeed. We'll see what Del Fanta can do, and then we'll work our way through those other cars, because I think we may see quite a few changes in the order in these final moments. Del Fanta then in the number 5 Audi, currently P4 in the standings, is good enough for P7 for the time being. And then we've got Boothby that's found a 10th up still on his lap. I think that is it for Tillich, so no further improvements for him. Bischoff heading in towards the final corner now. What can he do? Also got Jardy on improvement. He's got a bit further of the circuit to go. So Marco Bischoff, championship leader, trying to see if he can snatch pole position away. It's going to be mighty close. He hasn't had the best exit out of Parabolica. I think he might lose it. And it's P3 at best for Marco Bischoff then. And Jardier's lost time as well, so his improvement starts to drop. Oh, that's a big moment for Jardier. Takes way too much cover right in front of the BMW. Just behind, who has to take avoiding action. Who was that? That's the number 21 car. That was Tok Palutov. So the 21, unfortunately, has to abandon their lap. Should be out of the way for everyone else, but not able to do anything more. But amongst all of that, George Boothby did manage to improve and takes pole. By the looks of it, by 0.02 of a second. Korekis is still improving in the number 3 McLaren. Quarter of a second up. Not sure it'd be good enough to challenge for the very front row, but could see his way in towards the top 5 if it manages to scrape just enough off the lap. And it is good enough for P5, as Walsingham also 0.3 of a second up on his lap time. He's on the run down towards Parabolica for the time being. What can he do in the McLaren? Can he get any further up the order? It's looking pretty good. Might break into the 47s if he sees this one home. Might miss out just outside of a top 10 grid spot. It wasn't a great exit from Parabolica. He's lost a good 10.5 there from what he had coming out of the Ascari chicane, so I think it might only be good enough for a small improvement. And it is P16 then for Walsingham, as that will be the qualifying session over and done with then. But George Boothby, what a fantastic lap from him. And also, has to be said, from Daniel Tillich in that BMW. Very, very good stuff. But what an opening front row of, or front kind of few drivers there. We've got George Boothby, Tillich, Bischoff, Lozanov, all in different manufacturers of cars. Then we've got Korekis, another McLaren, and then Jardier P6. So Marco crucially starting ahead of his championship rival in the end then. But what a fantastic qualifying session. So close and changing all the time. All the drivers were finding grip and time throughout that. We will run through the grid order in just a second. Just waiting for those results to officially come through, and then we shall make our way through the grid as George Boothby takes another pole position for himself. What a fantastic effort for the man that has been in such good form as of late. Winner last time out, of course, and takes another pole position for himself. Tillich starting on the front row alongside him in the BMW. So very good effort from the 28 car. Fantastic stuff from him. Championship leader and one of the most consistent drivers on the grid. Marco Bischoff then starts in P3 in the Porsche. He'll probably be quite happy with that one. It was a little bit unsure how that was going to fare. Lozanov goes into P4, the first of the McLarens, and then followed up by the man that finished 4th last time out at Indianapolis. Korekis starts P5, and then Jardier P6. First of the BMWs, second of BMWs, of course, to Tillich on the front row. So more pace in that car, and he would have wanted to have seen himself further up the order. Merles in P7, as Borgesman then in another one of the McLarens, and definitely can't miss that one. Very bright pink, excuse me, on that car, starts in P8. Eric Del Fanta starts in P9 with Samir Fock in the number 6 Ferrari, then starting and closing out the top 10 positions. Anton Tokbalutov in that BMW was on an improvement on his final attempt, but unfortunately Jardier's crash on the exit of Ascari put pay to that one. Solstov will start just behind him in P12, and then Antonio Fedeli, the Italian, starting in P13, will start just ahead of Luke Anderson. GTWR driver in the number 9 car will start in P14 with another one of the BMWs. Got a little group of the German outfit here in P15 to close out. Before we move on to Sasha Vassner, I think the second one of our Audis after Del Fanta will start P16, and then P17, Walsingham did have more time in that car, but just couldn't quite put it together in those last moments. And then Alessio Mellis in P18 for the Ferrari. Good effort there from him in the 16 car. And then Fabio Alemo in the number 15 Audi will start in P19. Daniel Sasplaki, that's probably an awful pronunciation, I do apologise, in the number 31 car will start in P20. Just behind will be Daniel Nardazinski in the 27 car. And then Nico Peninen will start in 22nd position with Alan Zilzovic in the 23rd spot. There's a lot of names tonight, which may give me a little bit of trickiness in pronunciation. We've got Klaus Petrol in the 25th or 25 car, starting in P24. Jonathan Clifford in the number 25 position then, and then Romain starting in 26th. And then we will have Sebastian Krohn in the number 22 car, starting in 27th. Francesco Giardanetto in 28th. And then it will be Jan Drexler in the 35 car to start out in 29th position. Followed up by Brandon Truman ready in the McLaren. Nice livery on that car. I think he is one of the in-game ones, but still very nice on there. Andre Bayer in that Lexus. Very nice car to have that roaring around Monza. I'm sure that'll be hitting the limiter on quite a few occasions. Igor Krishnich in the 32 car will start in 32nd place. Then it will be Brurier Major in the 17 Porsche to start in 33rd. Nicholas Gunzenhauser in the 36 car will start in 34th. Carlo Barberi in the red Aston Martin, I think I won Aston Martin on the grid tonight, will start 35th. And then Patrick Peel in the number 13 Audi will then close out our field. But it will be George Boothby to lead our drivers away for this 60-minute race. Absolutely fantastic stuff from him to get another pole position in such a tight and competitive field. Doing everything that he needed to once more. Has been super consistent as of late in that Ferrari. It's been very familiar to see that car at the front of the pack on more than one occasion. But does not make it any easier a job for him to do that, as it will be another compulsory pit stop for everybody again in this race, and of course a pit window, which I do believe last week was the slight downfall, unfortunately, of one of our drivers. If it wasn't last week, it may have been one of the previous ones. It can be so easy to forget how the pit windows work in this, and I'm sure several people have all had those horrible moments where they underfuel the car, so hopefully there won't be any mistakes like that this evening. But who will come out on top then for 60 minutes of Monza? Boothby and Tillich look very, very quick, certainly in qualifying trim. Will that convey over to race pace? We'll have to wait and see. And then what will the likes of Bischoff and Jardier do, our championship protagonists? Dueling it out in these last couple of rounds. Bischoff realistically just needs a good, consistent couple of finishes in these next two races, as the camera descended into a very curious angle. I thought we were going to go through the map then, but thankfully not. Bischoff really only needs a good, clean couple of races to bring the championship home. He's done the hard work throughout this season, and He'll be hoping that he does just that then, as everyone starts to merge into a bit of a vehicle centipede and sort themselves out in the grid positions then. So can that number 4 car convert another pole position from the LFM Pro Series as we go into round 11 and the penultimate round of this championship? Boothby, 3-time winner, has been in exceptional form as of late. He's carried that momentum straight into this race, and he'll be looking to see if he can make it 2 on the trot. I think that'll be the second back-to-back set of victories after Jardier's earlier on this season, if he can convert it. As we now patiently wait for the lights to go out. It'll be 60 minutes of action at Monza, and they're away then. And it looks like a pretty good start there from the front row for George Boothby. But Tillich is trying to come back, and he may give him company. So is Marco Bischoff, actually, all the way down towards turn 1. It's getting very, very busy already. As Jardier also trying to go around the outside as that fleet of cars all comes flying in towards turn 1. Lozanov looks up the inside. Bischoff covers it all. Almost contact. A 3 wide into turn 1. And Marco Bischoff, is he around? I can't see where he's gone. Trying to pick him up on time screens. George Boothby skips the chicane. I think that's Jardier that's in P2. It is. And Korekas 3 wide now with Tillich and Borgesman. They've got Lozanov for company as well. I'm trying to work out whereabouts has Bischoff gone in all of this. The time board not doing me any favours for the time being. And he's down all the way in P15. So disaster then for the championship leader. I said that he needed a clean getaway, and that's the exact opposite what happened. Just trying to cover off Lozanov, I think, in towards the first chicane, and made contact immediately 3 wide on the apex. And that is going to give him a big headache going into this one. But Jardier doing everything he needed to, jumping up immediately to second place, and sets off in hot pursuit of his teammate. Tillich then down to P3. And Korekas P4, Lozanov P5, Borgesman P6. As in the background, we've got Luke Addison and Samir Fock and Del Fanta all battling out down towards the Ascari chicane. The BMW seems to have good straight line performance just up ahead. We've also got Hugo Merles, I think, trying to hold off Tokipilotov in the 21 car. Samir comes on top in that battle, and Merles does manage to keep the BMW behind for the time being. But I'll tell you what, someone who has not let go of a potential race victory here is Jardier, who's looking extremely quick, heading down towards Parabolica, all over the back of his Yassi teammate. George Boothby, unlike some of the other races where he's pulled away at the very start, has not been able to escape out of the clutches of Jardier. How much straight line speed has this BMW got down the start-finish straight for the very first time? He's closing all the time. Will he send it down towards turn 1? How brave does he feel? George Boothby's not going to defend the inside line, and Jardier backs out of it. Can't quite compete with the braking of that car. I think Solotov was looking up the inside of the McLaren. We've also got Addison and Samir going side by side again. Addison trying to go around the outside, and he can't do that. Has to skip the chicane. I'm sure he'll have to give that position back, but it's going to get tricky because Del Fanta's now going to make it 3 wide, trying to go around the outside of Samir Fock, using that remaining Audi power, and goes by the pair of them. Brilliant stuff from the number 5 car. And now Luke Addison trying to come back and see if he can do anything about the Ferrari in front. He obviously had to give up that position. Marco Bischoff, you can see just in the background there, still down in P15. As the McLaren are waltzing, and let's take a little bit of evasive action not to run into the rear bumper of the BMW, but they all managed to sort themselves out for the time being. But Marco Bischoff now locked into this very tricky tussle, and how much straight line speed has that Porsche got? We know he's got pace in that car, but is it going to be enough to try to make some of these moves? Because he's got the BMW of Peninen all over the back of him. That's going to make it very, very difficult for Bischoff to try to make an overtake. He is gaining on the car in front, though. Can he do anything down towards the Ascari chicane? I'm not sure that he can. And no, the Audi has got enough legs, especially in that toe. He's got wide, if anything. Number 14 trying to go around the outside through Ascari. Peninen, brilliant move. Capitalising on that. Oh, can't have been in the road. Oh, no. And Bischoff takes evasive action again. That's a huge moment. That's Clifford in the background slamming across the track. Disaster. Master and one of the other BMWs going side by side on the grass, all the way down the run there through Ascari. Huge amounts of chaos there in the background. They all start to make their way through. As we've also got changes of position on the front, so we can't catch on the replay, because now Borgesman trying to make it 3 wide with Korekas and Lozanov trying to go around the outside as well. All getting very, very close between these two. Borgesman goes through. Can Lozanov follow his way through as well? I think Korekas might have just about enough heading towards the first chicane, but absolute chaos further down the field then. Borgsman does get through. Korekis now under pressure from Loznov behind, who has got a little bit of a run on the McLaren in front. Korekis defending the inside wisely, but Loznov will start to get a little bit of a toe off the pink McLaren just in front. Can he do anything under brakes? He's been very, very brave under the brakes there. Can he go all the way around the outside? Be brilliant if he can. No, and he can't. Takes evasive action, and surely we'll have to give that a place back to Korekis. I would expect him to get out of the way. Otherwise, Korekis, I imagine, is probably not going to be too happy about that one. Looking further down, though, we've got a lot of movement there between the likes of Pennington, Addison, and the Audi just in front. Marco Bischoff still in P15. After all that, I had horrible visions. He was going to go straight into that BMW that was stricken across the side of the track there. I think he just about managed to avoid any contact. I can't see any damage on the front bumper of Bischoff's car, so I think he's managed to get away there without any damage, but absolute disaster for championship leader. Complete chaos. Could have been so much worse there, as Addison now applying all sorts of pressure to the Audi in front. That's Fabio Alemo, but Penninan trying to make it 3 wide down towards Parabolica. He looks towards the inside now. The Audi defending that. Can Addison do anything around the outside? It's going to be tricky because he's got Penninan now to worry about. He's trying to sneak through on the inside as well. Addison sent all the way around the outside. I'm going to have to check that up at the front because Jardier is right on the gearbox trying to challenge for the race lead. What does he do? He stays in the slipstream. So these two working together, trying to break away for the time being. Penninan, though, does make his way through on Addison. Now in the slipstream of the Audi, trying to make it 2 in 2 corners. He got a car coming out of the pit lane. Oh, that got very, very scary. I was worried there might be a moment as he pulled out. Marco Bischoff trying to find a way through. Addison goes back down towards the inside. Mishka having to dive to the outside of the track now. The 14-inch car trying to go around the outside of the Audi in front, and he's got a good run out of there. The 15, though, will fight on the exit. Has the Audi got enough grunt coming out of turn 2 there? It's going to be a drag race all the way down to the second chicane. The Audi on the shorter line, but the BMW just about keeping a nose alongside, but does have to give up in the end. Marco Bischoff trying to go alongside Luke Addison on the entry to that chicane. Bischoff will be sent to the outside. He can't quite make his way through there, continuing to struggle to make up any advantages. But my goodness, look at these packs of cars. Absolute chaos everywhere you look. Gunzenhauser gets a good run on the 32 car, and that's Igor Krishnic in the BMW just in front. Can the Porsche sneak down the inside of the first Lesmo? Gets it hooked up over that inside curb. The Lexus in the background of Bayer hunting around, trying to see if he can make anything happen. Always a little bit of contact maybe. And Lexus trying to see if he can get 2 for 1 down this back straight. The BMW has lost both positions though, and now Lexus all over the gearbox of that Porsche. I think Melis and Romain may have swapped positions further up the order, but there's only so many places we can look at once. And Andre trying to see if he can go down the inside in towards the Ascari chicane. Can the big bad Lexus make it happen? And I don't think the answer is yes. And he can't quite, unfortunately, so it looks like he will drop back for now. But we've also got this train of cars all going side by side down in towards Parabolica. Vassner down the inside of Drexler, and he's being followed through by Togpalutov, who may be recovering. I think that was the car that was stricken across the exit of Ascari. Now 3 wide again down towards the turn 1 chicane. It's all going to get very, very busy between these guys. That straight line speed is going to be hampered though in that BMW. He hasn't got the slipstream and he's got the aero damage. Can Drexler fight back? I think Anton might have the advantage on the brake. Very, very close contact on the entry to the braking zone, but just about manages to squeeze through there. Meanwhile, Jardier has dropped away from George Boothby at front, so I'm not sure if he made a mistake somewhere on that lap. Meanwhile, Igor and Gunzenhauser swapping positions through the first chicane there. Not sure if the Porsche will be able to do anything down towards the next chicane. These two battling for the last couple of sectors. Porsche gaining all the time, does manage to head down towards that inside line. Who will be braver on the brakes? Number 36 car trying to get past. Oh, but it's good braking though from the BMW to hold that position, so unable to find a way through for the time being. Checking up back at the front then, Korekis is only 0.3 of a second away from Loznov in that rival McLaren, so can he find a way past the number 20 car? We've seen Korekis had to execute so much patience previously to try to make any overtakes happen. It does look like the Loznov very quick on that back straight though, so maybe Korekis good through the corners. His time may come later on in the race. Meanwhile, We've got Marco Bischoff and Addison just in front, trying to go down the inside once again of Fabio Lemo, and I'm not sure there's anything that the Audi can do this time around. And Addison does make his way then up in towards P12. Fabio having to lose out on that one, but what can this man do? Marco Bischoff trying to close in on a rather battered and bruised BMW of the number 14, that's Pennanen, just up ahead, trying to see if he can make his way past in towards the first chicane then. Be the first position he's recovered in a while, trying to go down the inside. Pennanen is fighting it, he's still there. Good defense from the number 14. The acceleration is going to go the way of the Porsche on the exit, but who has the straight line top speed to compete? And it does look like it's going to be the Porsche of Bischoff, unless Pennanen can come back on that run. He's trying to see if he can gain. Bischoff has to defend it, and he is going to go to that inside line. Mishka rubbing his hands together to see if he can do anything about this. Oh, he has to take evasive action not to run into the back of Pennanen there, and it does look like Bischoff, the number 1 car, has managed to make his way up into P14, but certainly not where he wanted to be in the opening 10 minutes of this race. Karekas still on the heels of Loznov just in front. Fastest lap of the race actually going towards Tillich, who is very, very close to the back of Jardier now. Gained half a second last time around. And is looking in fine form potentially in this race. Can the BMW really spring a surprise at the front of the pack? Boothby has managed to stretch his legs a little bit. Have to see what the lap time deltas are when they come across the line. Yellow flag for Walsingham, who's gone very, very wide on the exit of Ascari. What happened to the McLaren there? Oh, you see, dips a wheel in the gravel. Oh, and he does catch a wall on the other side. Manages to stop it bouncing across for a second time, but that has, I think, cost him a position on Addison. It has. So Addison, when they got down towards Parabolica, easily waltzes on past that very heavily damaged McLaren. Makes his way up into P11, so that's going to be a very tricky next 15 odd minutes or so for that McLaren, because that is very, very damaged, and that car does not do well with heavy impacts. Meanwhile, Melis and who is that? That is Merles going side by side, the 16 trying to get past what is a very battered and bruised front end on the front of Merles' car. I think that may have been the other car that was involved with that contact with Anton earlier on. Vassner now trying to follow the Ferrari through, will get the slipstream as well. And he's also got Anton also making his way through, so Merles possibly dropping 3 positions in just a couple of corners. The BMW always getting very, very tight under braking, but just about managing. Oh, there is contact! Oh, and Merles tags him around the BMW, the McLaren, excuse me, of Brandon. I think makes a little bit of contact there as well, but does sneak his way through. As well, let's have another look at how that one panned out. Oh, the replay didn't go quite far back enough, apologies. But Merles then tagging the back of Anton, and that may not be the first time that those two have come together this race either. Also checking in on those front laps. Last time around, Jardier, fastest man on circuit, only by 0.03 of a second. But both himself and George Boothby able to pull away ever so slightly, as Madra and Nartazinski, I think, just may have swapped some positions there. The Porsche getting past what looks to be another very damaged BMW well before they got to that first chicane. You can see some drivers already coming into the pits. That's Drexler trying to make a move on Hugo Merles, as that Ferrari, very, very damaged, may even come into the pits in just a moment. Chooses not to. Oh, there's a yellow flag for the number 29 car. Number 29, who is that? That is Alan Zilzovic in the Ferrari. Oh, I think he's had that's an awful camera angle for us, but I think he's had a moment very similar to Walsingham. By the looks of it, may have kept it out of any walls, but certainly not what he would have wanted. As meanwhile, who's that was dropping down the order for just a second? That is the BMW of Narzinski. I think he may have skipped that first chicane whilst trying to defend the position from Sebastian Krohn, who is going to go by well before the second chicane, so making his way up the order. Meanwhile, Karekas has been slowly closing down onto the McLaren of Loznov. just in front, almost pushing him along down towards the Ascari chicane. You saw that McLaren just move ever so slightly towards the inside line, trying to make sure that he doesn't sneak anything up the inside towards. That's a huge jump for Carreras, and following through Ascari can be so difficult at times. He manages to pull it together and keep out of the wall, but a huge jump there for Carreras, and will lose at least a couple of positions. Meanwhile, Bischoff has made his way through on Fabio Alemo well before the Ascari chicane, so another position for the championship leader. Crucial points, but what a big moment there for Carreras. Really did jump to the moon with that one. Meanwhile, Tillich has been absolutely flying on this last lap, and he's closed that gap towards Juddy again, maybe looking down the inside. Backs out of it though wisely, and will stay in P3 for the time being. But the only man in the 47s last time around, 0.4 of a second quicker than George Boothby. When have we been saying that as of late? So Tillich right now really looking like the man on the move, and still very much a part of this race for victory. Meanwhile, Pernanen battling very hard with Fabio after losing that position to Bischoff, and now finds his way in towards P13. Has got the Finnish driver for company now. Excuse me, Alemo has company. That is a yellow flag for 23 car. So who is that on circuit? That is Carlo Barberi. I'm trying to pick him up. There he is. What has happened to the Aston Martin? So I think he's had a moment through the Ascari chicane as well. Unfortunately, didn't quite manage to grab it, but the red Aston Martin not having a great time then. But checking back further up the order, Pennanen still all over back of Alemo. Does seem to have the pace advantage at the moment. Will go on board the front splitter. You can see flashing of the lights reflecting in the diffuser of that Audi in front, and the BMW, not known for its straight line pace, but does seem to be pretty handy around here today. Gaining all the time. The Audi does defend the inside line, moves back towards the racing line just for the braking zone. Oh, we can see the overspeed that the BMW of Pennanen able to carry in on the entry. How's he fare through the curves, not making a mistake like Carreras did earlier. That's a very nice run for Pennanen as they head down towards Parabolica. Be a drag race between the BMW and the Ferrari. Pennanen will be sent towards the outside. Doesn't have all the legs to compete with the Audi though. Does he go back towards the inside? Can't make it happen. He has to time his run on the Audi here. Really trying to swing the momentum. Just checking in, another BMW trying to make a move, I do believe, is Anton around the outside of Nardazinski, who has been dropping positions these last few laps. Both of those BMWs have had a little bit of a facial rework over the opening phase of this race. Although we have a couple of clean examples up at the front of Jardier and Tillich. Again, the pair of them 0.2 faster than George Boothby, so we may have a three-way fight for the race lead very shortly, so that could get very interesting. As meanwhile, Anton trying to make another move on Hugo Merles. It's battle of the crippled cars at the front of this train of the top 25, and Tokbalatov, sorry, does manage to make his way into 24th position then, and the Ferrari does drop just behind. But these cars visibly very wounded in all of that opening action there. Many incidents. We weren't able to see it for absolute certain, but it did seem like Anton was that BMW that went sideways across the track and almost caused Bischoff to completely wipe out on the exit of Ascari. And considering where he was on the track, may have had something to do with Merles. Did seem to drop down the order at the same sort of time as Nicholas and Igor swapping positions again. A switchback for Igor as they head through the first Lesmo. And the BMW, once again, Matt does manage to just jump in front of the Porsche. As meanwhile, Bischoff trying to make a move onto Walsingham, and he has got it done. Walsingham, we saw, very damaged after his moment on the exit of Ascari. So Bischoff now up into P12. Pennanen all over the gearbox, almost contact with the Audi just in front. They head through Parabolica, almost a moment of oversteer coming out of Parabolica. And again, Pennanen has to time this run on the Audi, because if he hits that slipstream too early, and he pulls out of it too early, the Audi does seem to have the horsepower, trying to dive towards the inside line now, but you can see the Audi of Fabio does just about have enough to outcompete him on the straight. Mishka trying to see if he can use that to get back involved in his lump of curb though for Pennanen in the first chicane, and unable to make a move. Meanwhile, Madra trying to go around the outside of Sebastian Krohn. In fact, I think it may have been Krohn making a move. Now Zazinski making his way around the Ferrari, and it's Andre Bayer going down the inside of the BMW of, I think actually that's a back marker, I do believe, in between those cars. I can't quite see what the number is, but Lexus making his way past in all of that. Tillich, after closing that gap, has dropped away. It was good laps there from our front two. Pretty even between them, but Tillich not able to go with them last time round. Meanwhile, Vasta, huge run on Mellis, and a very unusual overtaking spot, trying to slide down the inside. It's a second Lesmo disaster. Mellis off on the exit into the gravel trap. He's going to have Brandon, surely will get past, and Mellis understandably not happy about that one, flashing lights to Vasta. And then it was a very opportunistic move, and it got very, very tight between those two. And a little bit too tight, unfortunately, and the Ferrari coming out worse. Free position, though, for the number 30 car. Meanwhile, Pendon still fighting furiously with Fabio just in front. Unable to find a way past the Audi. And the pit window now open, so all of those cars, I imagine, that are suffering huge amounts of damage will surely start to dive into the pit lane. The likes of Walsingham, I would expect to be straight in there. He's not. Well, that is a huge surprise. Maybe that damage, not severe. I mean, it would have been a side impact, but I would have expected him to head towards the pit lane pretty early on. But maybe too worried about tyre wear. Pendon trying to time the run. Once again, heading towards the outside. That Audi still good straight line speed. Maybe not quite the rocket ship it was a few weeks ago, but still enough to keep that BMW from making up any positions. Meanwhile, a couple of pitters do head in. Anton Narzazinski, I think, is in there as well, and Hugo Merles, and that maybe not too surprising. Those cars have suffered brutal damage in the early phase of this race, and surely they'll be looking to get that repaired. Meanwhile, though, up at the front, Tillich hasn't been able to quite close back in on this group. Very close, actually, both the second gap between George Boothby and Jardier, and then Jardier to Tillich, and all within a few hundredths of a second last time round. So these two putting in very, very consistent laps at the moment. But maybe with that pit window open, will we see anyone go for a daring strategy change? Will that be all the invitation they need to try to make a move? Whereas Pendon trying to do it the old-fashioned way, just trying to set up a move once more onto the Audi in front, but he can't do it. Meanwhile, Nicholas and Igor battling once again. It was Gunzenhauser to send it down the inside towards Lesmo. Acceleration out of the chicane. Did take the position just in front of the BMW, and I think he's maintained that one as well before the Ascaris chicane. He has. Meanwhile, Pendon hounding the back of that Audi as some of those drivers have pitted. Come out the pit lane. Mishka going very, very wide there. Fabio doing the same. He's got the straight line speed advantage that he needs to keep that BMW behind for the time being. Update at the front. Jardier fastest of everyone. 2/10 faster than George Boothby and 3/10 clear of Tillich. So Jardier maybe starting to find some pace now. Maybe he'll end up making it 3 race wins this season himself. And what a setup that would give us going into the final race of the season. Bischoff still down in P12. A couple of seconds away from Luke Addison, but setting very even lap times at the moment, although the pair of them are closing in on the likes of Del Fanta, Samir Fock and Antonio Fedeli. So maybe top 10 still on the cards for our championship leader, but very, very difficult day, and not the day that he would have wanted so far in this race. Meanwhile, checking further down the order, I saw Mellis getting very close with Drexler. I'm trying to find them on my leaderboard. There we go. Actual fact, no, excuse me, that is the Delta 2 Brandon Truman ready in, or Reddish, sorry, in front in that McLaren. As meanwhile, Clifford and Klaus Petrol trying to go side by side through the first couple of Lesmos. Again, we've seen this end in disaster between couple of drivers before they make it through there. Just about has Clifford got the pace in that Lamborghini rocket ship in a straight line now, generally speaking, and has previously been quite a competitive car around Monza, and does look like he's got the advantage that he needs over Klaus in that 25 car to keep that position. Merles just up ahead. Say just up ahead. In actual fact, he's about half a sector up ahead. Excuse me. He's come out just in front of Bischoff, who will be gaining some slipstreamers. Meanwhile, Peninen and Mishka maybe making a 3-wide moment all the way down towards turn 1 again. Mishka trying to slot the inside in between. The Audi and the BMW can't make it quite stick. Neither of the BMWs have the straight line speed over the Audi. Can Peninen go around the outside? He's tried it before, keeping his foot planted. Good exit. The Audi shoved towards the outskirts of the track. Peninen trying to come back. He's managed to reclaim this position before. And Peninen maybe going out wider than he wants to, because that Audi, the power, does manage to see him climb back in front of the BMW. Now Mishka trying to see if he can find a way through, diving towards the inside line inside Ricciardo, switching around on the entry towards the second chicane, but the 14 car still cannot find a way past the Audi just in front. Meanwhile, gap at the front continuing to close, 3/10 in favour of Jardier last time around. Less than a second separating himself and the leaders. Korekis now behind Soldatov, so I think Soldatov at some point has managed to get in front. Of course, I think that would have been after Korekis' mistake through this very corner. Doesn't end up repeating it. Last time round though, 1.1 seconds in favour of Korekis there. Gaining on Soldatov, so maybe a mistake from the number 8 car. In that like and subscribe car, goes a little bit deep on the entry to Parabolica. How fast is that McLaren in straight line? Very, very tight line. Is he heading towards the pits? He's not, but Borgesman further up the field is. He's gone board with the McLaren. What has he got in comparison to the BMW of Soldatov? It doesn't look like he has enough, but checking at the front, Jardier got very, very close for a moment. You can see visibly has pulled a huge gap now over Tillich, who for a time was very much pushing these guys for a 3-way fight on the lead. As meanwhile, Peninen still hunting around the back of the Audi, unable to do anything about it. I think Mishka's dive towards the pits as he's not in that fight anymore. Korekis now, can he do anything down towards the second chicane? He's all over the back of the BMW, but chooses to stay behind. Korekis generally has shown a great deal of patience in some of these races, and it has often rewarded him. Clearly an unfavourable mistake in this race today, but it is so tricky to follow through some of these sectors, as I think we've got maybe some side-by-side action between the number 30 car of the McLaren and then Alessio Mellis managing to make his way through, recovering after that contact with one of the other cars. So the Ferrari does make his way up into P15. There's also, I think, in all of that, how's Bischoff pitted? He has. So Bischoff just coming out of the pits now. There isn't anybody else really on the circuit he was battling with at the time, I don't think, that have made their pit stops yet, but we'll have to see how that all ends up playing out. Meanwhile, Korekis trying to see if he can go down the inside of the BMW in towards Parabolica. It'd be tricky to make that one stick, but he might have enough of his car alongside. BMW going to try and keep him honest on the outside line, but that's going to be a difficult one to make stick, and Solstov now trying to fight back, and they're very close, and the BMW fighting back in a straight line, and usually does have the pace advantage over the McLaren. I think Peninen and Alemo going side by side towards the first corner as well. BMW fighting back. Can Korekis do anything under brakes? He's trying to see if he can make it stick in towards turn 1. He's as brave as he can be, and he does manage to get through. What can the likes of Peninen do with the Audi behind? He's been seeing the face full of the number 15 for so much of this race. We're closing in on the halfway mark, but still the Audi holds strong enough top speed to keep that car behind. Also, last time round, George Boothby responded to the pace of Jardier, pulled the 10th, although I think may have made a mistake there, because Jardier all of a sudden 0.3 of a second gained at the end of the first sector, and now very much with the Ferrari in his line of sight. Last week's winner coming under pressure from the man that sits P2 in the standings. He's P2 in this race, but he would love to make it P1, and what a turnaround of events it could be for Jardier. He's been needing a bit of bad luck to happen for Bischoff. He's been given that on a silver platter for today. Bischoff still has time to try to recover and minimise the damage, but it's certainly going to be a tricky one. We've got Del Fanta coming out of the pits. I think he's just been passed by Samir Falk, and he has. Whereabouts is the likes of... Where is Marco Bischoff? I'm trying to find him there we go. He's just appeared, and he is quite way behind Del Fanta, so still needing to try to close up, as once again the Ferrari of Boothby coming under pressure from that BMW, and in the slipstream he is gaining down towards turn 1. I'm not sure he'll be close enough this time. He's generally been very, very patient so far till it comes into the pits, and the Ferrari does maintain the advantage towards turn 1. Will Fabio be able to do the same in the Audi? Peninen giving him all sorts of company on the exit of Parabolica once again. And that is very, very close between those two. You see absolute faithful of this Audi, and doing exactly what I would have expected him to do, trying to stay in that slipstream as long as he possibly can. The Audi fights back on this straight, so you really need time to run, but you can see bum draft hasn't quite worked for the BMW in the way that he would have wanted, so has to settle behind again for the time being. And Jardier drops back once more, so that gap opening out. Very much a back and forth with himself and George Boothby. Maybe just difficult to follow around here at Monza. The curbs are so dangerous, and the last thing that Jardier wants to do is throw away what would be a big advantage in his favour. Even if he walks away with P2 today, that would see him gain a big chunk of points. Carlo Barberi has just brought out the yellow flag, and that doesn't look very healthy. Oh dear, I think he's gone off halfway through Ascari there, and that Aston Martin definitely needs a bit of facial work in the meantime. Anton and Narzinski going side by side. A 21 car trying to go all the way around the outside through Ascari. Brave move there from him. So he manages to make that one stick, and Narzinski goes way off on the exit of Ascari there. I think that was just all by himself. He made that mistake. Meanwhile, Vassner just coming out of the pits. That's allowed Bischoff to make up another position, but I think that's as they were before. Meanwhile, we've got a lot of deltas flying around at the moment, and would you believe it, I think we've missed the move between Peninen and Fabio, and we've been watching this battle unfold for so many laps. Meanwhile, both of our race leaders have come into the pits at the same time, so I have to see where they emerge amongst the likes of Tillich. So what happened then with Fabio? Did he make a mistake through a... Oh, just went completely wide before turn 10 there, and after all of that close action, a rather anticlimactic finish to allow Peninen to finally get through, and does take that position. Meanwhile, look at our championship rivals, our race leading rivals trying to battle for the win. George Boothby and Jardier still haven't left the pits. Jardier on the move now, and he has got in front. Jardier then much better pit stop than George Boothby, and Jardier into the effective leader of this race, unless Tillich has anything to say about it. He's coming down the start-finish straight now. You'll see a couple of those cars emerging just up in front. Has the undercut worked in his favour? Not at all. I don't think that has not benefited him at all, but Jardier then finds himself in the lead of this race. So I'm not sure if George had a poor pit stop, maybe missed his mark on the entry. I don't think he would have any damage to fit. Oh, actually, he could have fixed some damage, excuse me, with that contact at the beginning of the race with the likes of Bischoff, but I'd be very surprised if he did that. I wouldn't have expected it to be too much. I mean, it has definitely put him behind if he did repair it, but one way or another, Jardier then into the lead of this race by 2 seconds. And that is very much what he would have been wanting to see going into this one. Yellow flags out for Alemo further down the order. I do believe that is them emerging from the pit lane. Koreka still hounding the back of Soldatov just in front. And they've got Borgesman that's only just up the road, so one of the earlier pitters actually of that lot, and I don't think it's better fitted Raphael at all in that number 18 car, so that could turn into a three-way fight, I think, for what is effectively P4 in this race, as those tyres start to drop off for the pink McLaren. But right now, as we've got swappings of positions again, saw a flag come up for Narzinski, and that was with the Porsche emerging from the pit lane just in front of Igor, who has been battling with Nicholas for quite a chunk of this race. Hendrik Mischke also finds himself very close to the back of Peninen. No Audi in this fight anymore, of course, after that mistake from Fabio Alemo. Number 7 car now trying to see if he can find a way through. on the Finnish driver, who for the first time has some clear air ahead of him, but he's got company. That's the wrong car. There we go. He's got a face full of light blue BMW, who might be thinking move down towards the outside of Parabolica. As always, getting very close on the entry to the braking zone, but Pendant does hold strong for the time being. They may fight once more on the run towards turn 1, because even cars, obviously, between these two, the power advantage of the Audi was what kept Pendant behind for so long, but Slipstream working wonders for Mishka there, who makes a big swing towards the outside, trying to see if he can now break the BMW just in front in towards turn 1. Can he make it stick around the outside? Looks pretty good. Very close on the entry. Pendant tried this one a few times, might get a taste of his own medicine. He keeps him honest though and fights back on the exit. It's going to be another drag race all the way down towards second chicane. Pendant not wanting to give up this spot. Mishka trying to squeeze him. Oh, and slots just in front on the BMW in front for a moment, but has to immediately go defensive again, because that slipstream will start to reel in the BMW Pendant back into this. But Mishka then does find his way through. Very nice driving between the pair of them to make that one stick then. Up at the front, George Boothby hasn't immediately managed to reel in Jardier on that last lap. We'll get a better idea when the fresh deltas come through, but the initial pace still looking strong with... Oh, as I think Pendant and Mishka have swapped around again, all flashing of the lights. That's usually a pretty concerning thing, and it happens slightly before then. So perhaps that must have been on the entry to the first Lesmo, surely, because we were only just looking at that battle a second ago. As meanwhile, Korekis all over the gearbox once more. On Soldatov, these two been following nose to tail as our last driver, Brouillet Madra, comes into the pits from the lead and sees all of these positions start to be restored. George Boothby did gain a little bit of time last time round, so battle for the lead may not be over and done with yet. Much like this battle for P5, Korekis trying to climb his way back up the order down the inside of the BMW, heading in towards turn 1. That looks like he may have got that one done nice and easily, and I think he has. He's got to make sure he gets a nice exit, and he does indeed. Solstov, I think, is way too far back now to make anything happen towards the second chicane. And of course, crucially, with those positions being restored, we now see then Bischoff has found himself in P12, so he's gained 3 positions after the initial drop, but still well away from where he would have wanted to have been. Much faster though than Addison and Del Fanta in front last time around. So we'll have to see whether or not he's able to reel those drivers in and make his way back in towards the top 10 with the sort of chaos he's had. He may well be very, very pleased about that, but clearly not what he would have wanted from today, as again Hendrik, Mishka and Pendant going side by side through a chicane. I think Mishka got the move done, but Pendant trying to fight back on the entry to the first Lesmos may have been where they made some sort of contact before. Pendant showing in the AstroTurf, Mishka keeping his foot in it. Walsingham trying to get involved in this one as well, and he'll have good pace in that McLaren. Side by side once more between Pendant and Mishka. Mishka gets a better run on the exit of the second Lesmo. Walsingham trying to sneak up towards the inside. Pendant squeezing him towards the grass. I'm sure the McLaren wouldn't have been too happy about that. They've got Vassner now for company, trying to make this a 4-way battle for P13. McLaren trying to see if he can sneak up towards the inside of Ascari. He's got the Audi to worry about behind. That may compromise his line through there if Vassner can set up a nice exit. And we know that the Audis have seemingly been performing very well. Very wide exit for both the pair of them. Walsingham, I think, got a worse drop there. Obviously a bit of a nemesis corner for him, and Vassner does manage to make his way through, as does Mishka, in that duel between himself and Pendant. Pendant, not sure if he's going to fight back on the run down towards turn 1. He will get quite a nice slipstream, and it is proven to be very powerful. Previously, we'll hop on board the front splitter, gaining down this back straight. White flag out for Del Fanta. Not sure if that was anything to be concerned about. Don't think it was, but Mishka defending that inside line. Pendant going as far outside as he dares, but going a little bit too wide, and Mishka does hold on to it. Walsingham actually almost recovering the position away from Sasha Vassner, as a few of these drivers start to bunch up a bit now. Also, I think further down the order, we've got a battle with, that is Hugo Merles and Igor Krishnich. They've been fairly close at times, but not as close as Walsingham is to the back of Vassner. So really, we know that Vassner has good pace. Walsingham has good pace in that McLaren. very unfortunate incident on the exit of Ascari. We've seen that corner catch out a couple of people. Vassner goes wide. Walsingham gets a bad exit through there. As we get an unwanted visitor in the chat, if there are any mods to deal with that would be wonderfully appreciated if possible. As Walsingham has dropped away from the Audi in front and doesn't look like he'll be able to recover that position. Pennon, though, hasn't given up on this P13 spot. And also just checking in at front, 4/10 faster was Jardier last time around. And Tillich gained a small amount, or gained half a second, excuse me, actually, onto George Boothby. So if anything, Boothby could be coming under threat from the other BMW that isn't too far adrift. But Jardier now in prime position in this closing 20 minutes of the race to see if he can do something about that. Huge thank you, Adrenaline. Do appreciate it. Don't know why they have quite the obsession that they do with sim racing, but I suppose it's giving the genre some more attention, I suppose, in a weird way. Meanwhile, we've got Del Fanta and Fideli starting to battle that Audi. Very, very racy on the run down towards the second chicane, trying to go around the outside. The pit window's closed. Fideli shuts the door on the outside and does hold the position, goes wide on the exit. Del Fanta might get the cutback towards the first Lesmo. Fideli trying to squeeze him towards the inside line, but I think the Audi is well and truly alongside. And the number 5 car does soar into P9. Goes a bit wide on the exit, though, of the first Lesmo. That would have compromised his exit more than he was hoping for. Will the BMW of Fideli be able to fight back towards Ascari? He does seem to be closing a little bit, but that Audi power, is it just a little bit too much for Fideli? Thinking about it, but he's too far back to do anything realistically. And he goes a little bit wide, actually, on the entry. Meanwhile, Pennon and Mishka once again swapping positions. So these BMWs really scrapping as Vassner now trying to get involved in this, trying to go around the inside of Hendrik Mishka, who may lose 2 positions in a couple of corners. The Audi trying to sneak through on the inside. Mishka holds it around the outside. Brilliant defense from the BMW. And Pennon manages. Oh, it's just a big moment for the Audi. Huge save from Vassner there. And Walsingham immediately capitalizing on the advantage there. But let's get a bit of a look at how all of that unfolded. So Pennon got the run on the BMW just up ahead. And let's go on board with the Audi of Vassner. So you'll see the 2 BMWs sweep around the outside through Ascari, and then he'll take a chunk of curve through the apex of turn 10. It's exactly what Walsingham did earlier. Not quite as bad, same as Korekis, but very, very quick hands in that Audi to keep that one pointing in the right direction. So good job, that man. Meanwhile, Lozanov is putting some pressure around the outside of Samir Fogg down in towards second chicane, trying to go all around the outside of Ferrari. Leaves him just about the front, but not quite enough. Oh, and they make contact, and Lozanov there, I think, maybe trying to wait for Samir to recover. Fideli and Del Fanta are going to come through here. Samir all reversing onto the track. I think he's got enough of a delta to do that. Lozanov, not sure if he's continuing to wait. He does seem to have bolted for the time being. And now it's Marco Bischoff for company, who will be very pleased about that. Finds himself now in towards P10 and may be able to get another position very, very shortly. But it got very, very tight between those two. And unfortunately, another bit of contact through those series of corners. It can be so, so tricky to give just about enough room. We've obviously seen a lot of big moments and incidents between drivers in the sim racing world and the real world at that very series of corners. Lozanov now as the championship leader for company. And Fideli really has not let go of that P7 position of Del Fanta after the Audi managed to get in front. But we've seen these Audis not always had the strongest of pace, but just enough performance in a straight line that even with the slipstream, maybe enough to hold off any challenges from the BMW, although it's a better run towards the first chicane. Does Fideli manage to outbrake Del Fanta around the outside? He's giving it a good go, trying to see if he can keep him honest, but not quite. Oh, has to check up on the brakes on the apex there, and Lozanov also has to be a bit wary as Bischoff drops a little bit back actually from this group. So it's Lozanov now trying to recover some of those positions after that contact with Samir. We've also got the likes of Vassner and Walsingham battling as well. I'm also seeing that Alessio Mellis, according to the game, has a mandatory pit stop still left. So I can only imagine that he's made a pit stop before the pit window, and that pit window is now closed, so I have a horrible feeling that he may be getting a penalty, but he's got bigger problems right now because Fabio Alemo in that number 15 car is making contact with him on the entry towards the second chicane. Oh, as we may have another moment, they just about squeeze through there without making any further contact, but the Ferrari of Mellis, who may be having a difficult enough day as it is, not happy with Alemo's driving there on the entry. A little bit of unnecessary contact between those two, as Fideli still putting pressure onto the likes of Del Fanta. Lozanov has got Marco Bischoff for company, who has regained some of that ground. Let's see what is it like from the perspective of the championship leaders. A big handful have said that the Porsche can sometimes the entry oversteer, or even on the exit as well, struggling to get the power down, as in the meantime Korekis and Borgesman going side by side in towards the first chicane. Korekis trying to recover that position. Oh, and I think a little bit of contact on the second part of the chicane there, does manage to make his way through. Meanwhile, Fideli again trying to go around the outside of Del Fanta into the chicane. Can he make it stick? It's like watching a mirror image of what we just saw with those other two. I think Fideli might have got the job done, unless the legs on the Audi are able to pull back alongside enough in towards the second chicane. Walsingham and I think Vassner going side by side towards turn one as well, but there's only so many places that we can look, and it's a very, very tight battle. Lozanov defending the inside from Marco Bischoff. Del Fanta trying to fight around the outside, squeezing his way through into second apex. Almost contact on the exit. Lozanov touching the back of Del Fanta, and now Marco Bischoff trying to get involved in this. Oh, I thought there was going to be contact there between him and the back bumper of the McLaren. Lozanov defending the inside line. Bischoff set wide on the outside. Anderson getting involved in this one now, trying to see if he can recover this position, and he has to slot back in behind the Porsche time being, but the concertina effect very, very strong between each of those drivers. And I think also Walsingham and Vassner, can't tell if they swapped around or not last time around. I think it may have been Vassner putting Walsingham under pressure but unable to make a move stick. Meanwhile, white flag for George Boothby, so I don't know if he had a moment. Looking at the lap times last time around, 4 tenths of a second though in favour of George Boothby. Jardier losing a little bit of pace in these closing stages of the race, still has just over a second lead, but George Boothby certainly not giving up on this one just yet, and Jardier has a championship to think about, but with Bischoff recovering to P10 for the time being, and maybe a bit more, may need to try to eke out everything he can, as Vassner has made his way past Walsingham then, so couldn't make it stick last time around, but has made his way past, as Lozanov is trying to make a move on Del Fanta down the inside towards turn one. Then does Bischoff get involved in this? Oh, there is contact. Oh, it's got very messy, and Bischoff all the way off of the chicane. Oh, Bischoff, what a terrible day for him. Does actually somehow gain positions out of all of that madness, so I suppose in a way he won't be too disappointed with that, but contact between the drivers in front got very, very messy, and Walsingham does manage to fight back against the Audi of Vassner and again reclaims P15. Marco Bischoff, though, just trying to survive this race, does gain positions in all of that, but that got extremely messy. As we'll see if we can catch some of that again. There'll be damage on that car. You saw Fideli catching the front bumper of the McLaren, goes past Lozanov. Where does Samir Fock come out amongst all of that? Because he, of course, had a bit of a run-in with Lozanov up ahead now, so that gap has closed. It'll be interesting to see if they end up giving each other company, but somebody who is starting to gain, George Boothby, has been putting in some very, very fast lap times over these last few laps. That was still part of the replay, excuse me, as we then flick back towards our leaders. And that is going to be a very interesting final 12 minutes of the race, because George Boothby right now, the only man in the 47s as of late. Not quite the fastest lap of the race. Oh my goodness, he was gaining a huge amount of brakes there, and that was very, very close to the back of Jardier's car. I do want to see if we can get an on board of that. Look at this. your stomach in there as you try to get that car stopped. I'm sure there was a bit of a scream inside the cockpit of that car from George Boothby, but thankfully doesn't make contact with Jardier then, but is very much in striking distance potentially to make a move to reclaim the lead that he did have for so long. Lost it in the pits. And Jardier now trying to see if he can get another victory is all what's happened there with Lozanov and Fideli. Lozanov almost looked like he came to a complete halt there. Sent it towards the inside, had to back out, and there's more contact on the entrance towards the first chicane. So these cars not being able to keep away from each other at the moment. Meanwhile, we've got Sebastian Krohn and Romain battling for position. So I think that was, Romain in the Porsche. No straight line speed in comparison to the BMW, and that allows Sebastian to go straight past. Meanwhile, we've also got Hugo Merles trying to make a move as he recovers through the field on Nardazinski in towards turn 1, and I think that'll be a very easy move, and Nardazinski I think may have even lifted off the throttle then, so the Ferrari goes up into P26. Major putting some pressure onto Drexler. George Boothby dropped back a little bit on this lap, it seems. Maintained the gap at around 0.7 of a second, but hasn't quite been able to make his way any closer. Meanwhile, Lozanov recovering time to Fideli. These two have made contact on a few occasions now. Wide line, though, on the exit of Ascari for the McLaren. And that certainly won't help him in his efforts to get past as Brandon Truman Reddish now gets past Romain. So the Porsche dropping positions very frequently here, and nothing he could do against straight line speed of the McLaren there. Walters on by on the back straight towards Ascari then, as Major has managed to get past Drexler on the run towards Ascari. Slotted down the inside, and the 17 car does get into 22nd position. Meanwhile, I think there's a lot of replay catching up, because I think Lozanov has managed to get past the BMW. Has he? It almost looked like he might recover it there. And I think it was a drag race from Parabolica all the way down towards turn 1. And the McLaren ending up coming out on top in that fight. Meanwhile, Walsingham and Vassner going side by side once again. Vassner's been trying to use the straight line speed in the Audi to make his way past the McLaren, but again, cannot find his way through. As we'll go on board with the front splitter of Vassner here in the number 10 car in the slipstream. Can he set up another move, potentially going towards the chicane? Oh, a little bit of movement from both cars across the track there. Vassner's giving it a go late on the brakes towards turn 4, but can't do anything there. The McLaren having the dominant line through that couple of turns. George Boothby now within half a second, but drop back a little bit on that lap. Meanwhile, Samit looking very, very close to the back of Fideli, who's been dropping positions over these last couple of laps. Can the Ferrari, who has had a rather disaster-filled race at points, go around the outside in towards Ascari? Be a brilliant move if you can make it stick late on the brakes from the newly acquired Yassi driver, and the number 6 car does soar into P11 then, with P10 just a little bit further up the order and potentially within his grasp. As this the potential race win for another Ferrari. George Boothby all over the back of Jardier. And within 0.4 of a second now, the only man lapping in the 47s as of late. And still not quite the fastest lap of the race. That honours does go to Tillich, who has been keeping this battle honest but hasn't been able to reel anyone in. Addison close up to the back of Del Fanta. Good late race pace from Addison, must be said. Gained half a second actually last time round on Del Fanta. Marco Bischoff has not really been able to reel in these drivers, so P9 may be all he can achieve today. As Vassner once again trying to see if he can do anything about Walsingham in front. Does maybe set up a longer slipstream towards the second chicane. Or was that a change of position between Brouillet and the Porsche of Romain? No straight line speed whatsoever in that 24 car. That is definitely full position. That isn't a back marker, but nothing seemingly that Romain can do there. And that position then does go in favour of the number 17 car. Vassner still within 0.4 of the McLaren of Walsingham in front. So we have about 5 laps of this race left to go. As Addison keeping the Audi of Del Fanta for company. But as we've seen, the Audi in front of you can be a very tricky one to tackle. This is still post-BOP, remember, with those engine performance drops, as I think Romain has dropped another position. That looks like he's had a wide moment. Oh, big oversteer moment on the entry to the first Lesmo. Just about manages to gather it all together, but he does let through 3 cars there through turn 6 and 7. Vassner again, close to the back of Walsingham. Does he think about a late dive anywhere? Staying very close to the gearbox of that McLaren in front for the time being, who's run a little bit wider than perhaps he would have liked. And I think that might give Vassner a very good chance of getting a run towards turn 1. When does he pull out the slipstream? Does he try to bump draft? No, he dives out of it. There's a bit of rubber banding going on there. There's also swapping of positions further back with Drexler and Anton, but we'll see how this pans out with Vassner trying to go around the outside again of Walsingham, keeping a nose on the entry to the apex of turn 2. The McLaren fighting on the exit though. It'll be another drag race. The Audi not able to stay alongside for the time being, but has he got the horsepower? Has he got the drive to the second chicane? Walsingham defending that inside line again. He knows how to defend this. He's had a lot of practice over these last few laps. Vassner trying to go all the way around the outside, but Walsingham good on the brakes in that second chicane, and once more unable to do anything about the McLaren up ahead. Narzinski going down the inside of Gunzenhauser as he makes his way through. In actual fact, could have been defending from the Porsche, looking at some of those lap time deltas, as Addison all over the back of the gearbox of the Audi of Del Fanta again, who may have had a slightly compromised line. Look how much more controlled and graceful that BMW is through the Ascari chicane, and it's so much so that that momentum carries on to the back straight as he tries to make his way around the outside, getting a little bit of a toe off of the car in front as one of the back markers. I think Addison trying to go around the outside of Del Fanta, can't make that one stick, but may be able to set up the drive towards the first chicane even earlier than that. In actual fact, very, very much alongside the Audi, well before they even hit the start-finish line. And the BMW trying now to see if he can get his way through that Audi, though fighting back at the top end. But it looks like Addison's car competitive in a straight line, maybe more competitive than some of the other ones. How brave is he on the brakes? And the answer is not brave enough, and Del Fanta does get it stopped on the entry towards turn 1 and turn 2. So Addison will have to try to find another opportunity. A swapping of positions between Romain Sarr and Andre Bayer in the Lexus, as that brutal V8 powered Lexus storms his way past into 24th position as we head into the closing stages of this race. And last time around, Jardier made his way finally into the 47s and got a little bit of breathing space between himself and George Boothby, gap opening up to about second. And there will be 2 more laps of this race left to go when they hit the line next time around. Vassner and Walsingham once again side by side towards the second chicane. Can he make anything happen? Walsingham, very, very stern defence and good defence there, and Alemo has been able to sort of sneak into this battle slowly but surely. Slightly wide moment from Walsingham, white flag for Soldatov. I'm not sure if he's had an incident anywhere through Ascari. Oh, as he did! Huge bit of curb there over the edge, over the apex of turn 9. A very, very quick hands to manage to gather that one all up, so minimal damage there done to his race, as some of those deltas start to sort themselves out. Addison still hunting around the back of Del Fanta, unable to find a way through. The BMW does seem to have the stronger pace. Marco Bischoff has been faster than the pair of them these last few laps, but just hasn't been able to climb up any further. Looks like P9, unless these two really start to get into it. Oh, that's a big lift off from the back marker, almost straight into the back of the McLaren on the end, on the run down towards turn 1. Pulls out of the way of Marco Bischoff as well. I'm sure that gave Del Fanta, and especially Luke Addison, who would have been completely blindsided by that. A very, very big scare. Lesson to back markers out there. Not always the wisest thing to do to back off quite that severely. I think the notion is very admirable, but sometimes it can be rather terrifying. I've seen some big incidents with that in real life as well. But thankfully no harm done there. Vassner still unable to get past the likes of Walsingham. Anton trying to recover and make his way past Brouillet in the Porsche. on the brakes towards turn 1 on the inside 17 car, trying to keep it on the apex, and he does manage to hold it for the time being. And it does look like BMW will have to settle behind once more for the time being, as Gunzenhauser having another go and trying to get past Nardazinski down towards turn 1, and contact on the entry to the corner, and Nardazinski sent off onto the cut through the shortcut there. I'm not sure if he'll end up regaining the position as the race leaders head onto the final lap. The Porsche flashing his lights there, but and I think possibly rightly so. Nardazinski moving lines realistically, I think, on the entry to that braking zone, and has a very fast-moving Porsche just behind him, trying to find a way through. Speaking of finding a way through, Luke Anderson, this is the most alongside he's been so far, trying to go all the way around the outside of Del Fanta through Parabolica. Bischoff wide in the background, can't do anything there. Once more locked into the slipstream of the Audi just in front. The Audi horsepower able to keep this BMW behind, but can he maintain it for one more lap? We are on the final lap of the race. The gap at the front has opened up, and Jardier may have done just about enough to take this one to the flag, but Anderson now trying to see if he can go around the outside of Del Fanta, and he can't. Bischoff trying to see if he can get involved in this very, very late on, and a wiggle on the exit of that first chicane will possibly see Del Fanta be able to maintain that position. In actual fact, as we've got Vassner and Walsingham going side by side once more towards turn 2. We've seen them go like this. Vassner, though, the most competitive I think he's been in terms of side-by-side positioning. Race leaders making their way through. Ascari at the moment trying to keep an eye on so many battles at the same time. Vassner desperately trying to keep his nose down the inside. Can he do it on the final lap of this race? Oh, it's getting very, very close. Walsingham leaves him more than enough space. The Audi now compromised on the exit. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. If anything, he's coming under pressure from behind, but it is this man, Jardier. He did everything that he could have possibly dreamed of doing today, makes it 3 wins this season in the Pro Series, and takes the win here in round 11 at Monza, and sees us to a championship finale that we could have only dreamed of in towards COTA next week. Boothby has settled P2, Tillich in P3, Korekis will hit the line in P4, recovering after that big mistake. Borgesman, P5. Soldatov, despite that incident, did manage to keep it pointing in a straight line, although Bischoff is trying to see if he can snatch any more positions away in this race. It's been a very difficult day in the office, and not the one he would have liked, although better than he would have potentially imagined the way that things were going. He'll have to settle for P9 in the end. Anderson holds on, and Vassner has dropped away from Walsingham, has got Fabio Alemo all over his gearbox for company, has not been able to make his way through by the looks of it. And Vassner, I think, will hold on to the position to the line, does keep in P16 then. And we've got final battles going on between Igor and Romain on the run down towards Ascari. Romain Sarr has been dropping a lot of positions as of late, and I think he'll be losing that one on the very final lap. What can Gunzenhauser do about the BMW in front of Nardazinski? These two have had a little bit of a run-in in this race, but I don't think there's anything that the Porsche driver can do wide on the exit of Parabolica, and it will be Nardazinski that maintains that position to the flag then, as the final few runners will hit the line. And that is it then for that. My goodness, what an absolutely dramatic and intense 60 minutes of Monza there then. That was absolutely insane with each and every single one of our drivers. And going into the finale, Jardier then takes another win and puts himself in prime position to try to duke it out with Marco Bischoff into the final round. It'll be 90 minutes when they go to COTA. And wow, that's big implications on the championship. Marco really did seem unfortunate today, unable to really do a great deal in that race, and just kept on finding himself involved in incidents. And I do believe we'll also be aiming for some interviews, so hopefully we'll get some of those together in just a second. See if we get any drivers in the comms box for interview. Would be nice if we could get our podium finishers, and also Marco, if he would be willing to join. Maybe not quite the day that he would have been wanting, but certainly be interesting to get his view on the matter. So if I see any drivers heading into the interview room, then we will head over to Zappi and Maris to close out the results from this race. But my goodness, what an absolutely intense bit of action that we had with all of that. Then Jardier does take the win in this one, and crucially gets himself a 310 point advantage over Bischoff, just making it that little bit more possible going into the final round. It looks almost out of the question, I would say, today, before the race that Bischoff had, but with the performance that Jardier put on, did everything that he needed to do to make that one happen, and gives himself just a little bit of a chance heading into the final round of the championship. Good efforts from George Boothby as well, led the race for so long in the early phase, and Tillich as well looked very competitive at points in that, still held the fastest lap of the race to the end there, and scoring a great podium finish for him, but just unable to stick with our front two in the end. And Jardier coming out on top of all of that. Korekas, good recovery from him as well after that big mistake. So difficult following Lozanov through the Ascari chicane and then clipping that into like a Borgisman P5, Solstov P6 with his own issues, Del Fanta P7. I think we had Luke Addison in P8 with Marco Bischoff then in P9. And after all the chaos that Bischoff was subjected to in that race, you have to wonder sort of how he managed to recover into the top 10 in the end, because it looks out of the question. And even when he did get involved in the incident, somehow in all of that, he actually gained positions as a result. So a very up and down, an unusual race for him. We're so used to seeing Bischoff competing at the front, being right up there with Jardier or our race leaders. And he's been so consistent all season long, and he hasn't really had any bad luck up until this point. Jardier has had a couple of moments, Silverstone probably most notably, completely blindsided on a car that was across the track at Abbey Curve, and that completely ruined his chances of a good result there, while Bischoff was able to bring home a strong finish. So it started, it's even things out a little bit in terms of bad luck, and it gives Jardier just that little bit of a chance heading into the final round of the championship, which of course is exactly what we want to be seeing, because we want the championship to go down to finale. We want all of the drama to head to the very final lap. And that, in the Pro Series, much like all the other fine margins that we have had and seen all season long, is exactly what we are going to get. So, fantastic stuff once again. And Monza always tends to provide some brilliant action. It's exactly with our best drivers on the platform. A lot of incidents as well. I'm sure there'll be some discussions between certain drivers, as there were some unfortunate bits of contact. We saw Samir making contact with someone in the second chicane and dropping down the order. Lozanov ended up coming together with some other people. Fideli got a little bit beaten up in all of that as well. So a lot of chaos, but a lot of glorious action. It doesn't look like, unfortunately, that we are going to have any interviews. No one has lined themselves up in the comms box, as Zappi just confirmed. So, unfortunate stuff there. Would have been nice to get the thoughts and feelings of Jardier and George Boothby as well, as they become now equal most winningest drivers of the season, taking 3 wins apiece. Jardier denying George Boothby making it back-to-back wins this season, but still very, very strong finishes for them. And just before we close out, we'll have a little bit of a look at the championship standings of where that will kind of place people we'll have to calculate some of these a little bit on the fly because the leaderboards will take some time to update. So Marco Bischoff will still be in a very nice P1 on about 5,950 points. Jardier closes the gap up as he gets to 5,200 or so. George Boothby will distance himself away from Del Fanta in P4 in the standings as he jumps up to 3,750. Del Fanta will, I think, maintain his current position with Samir Fock having a difficult race. Karppinen dropping or not featuring in the order. Valentine not racing tonight either. Darking away as well. I think he's been suffering with COVID as of late, so wishing him a speedy recovery. Walsingham may have made his way up a position potentially over Darking, but I think generally speaking in our top 5 or so, the positions will be more or less the same as they were before, but just perhaps a little bit more cemented in place. Other than that closing of the championship lead, of course, with Jardier and his victory this evening, giving us a title fight going into the final round of this series then. So that looks like it will be it then for tonight's action. So thank you everybody so much for watching and all the support in the stream chat this evening. I did see some of the nice comments there, so I do appreciate it. And also thank you so much for the support on all the streams as of late as well. It's been a fantastic journey. We are heading into the final round of the Pro Series where there is a championship on the line as we head to the Circuit of the Americas for 90 minutes of racing next week. Same time, same place. And if you do want to see more of the action and keep up with all of the streams, both when this championship ends and when we move over to the next seasons of racing, then do consider subscribing to the channel. And if you have liked what you've seen on the stream tonight, then do also consider putting a like on the stream. It does all help very much, and it is all very much appreciated. So hope to see as many of you there as possible next week, and potentially some of you on the track in the future as well, because if you want to get involved in some of this action, then do also consider heading over to lowfuelmotorsport.com, get yourself registered, get yourself a license, and work your way up the ranks, and you could be competing with some of the best drivers on the platform that we have seen racing tonight and duking out amongst the very best, and also get involved in some of that wonderful daily racing as well that we all love so much. But that is going to be it then for this evening. So thank you everybody so much for watching and for all the support. I hope you enjoyed the stream as much as it was fun to commentate over it, and shall see as many of you there as next week as possible for the final of the season. But then for tonight, it will be goodbye.